Roland Parliament is a voice actor, dialectician, composer, a writer, and an educator who lives in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, who currently does voiceovers, auditions, and teaches courses at Ryerson, Humber College, and the University of Toronto in dialects and voice acting. He's voiced thousands of commercials, composed numerous jingles, and won countless international awards for his work. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you the first voice director of the English language version of Sailor Moon, Roland Parliament. Good evening, Mr. Parliament.
Good evening, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So what inspired you to do this book?
Money.
That's fantastic.
Well, I've always loved writing. I mean, I've written so many things, commercials and jingles and so forth. And I thought, and this also came about as a result of attending the Sailor Moon conventions, where you could see that the audiences were really hungry for information about this. So I thought, okay, I can put this all into a capsule that they can see and read about what exactly took place during this thing, because I don't think many people understood what really went on behind the scenes and the hard work that went into it.
No, I think that's true, and being on the other side of it, even though I was about 10 or 11 years old when this came out and really came to appreciate it, when I was in my mid-teenage years when it started running on Cartoon Network in the U.S., you often read things like, well, this didn't stick close to the original, or they could have done this better, and I don't think there was much of an appreciation for the process that was involved with it.
No, and, we were just actors, so we didn't really have any control over the scripts or the translations or anything like that. That was all up to the producers at Deke in Burbank, California, and then they passed it down to our producers here, Optimum Productions, and that was passed on to me, so we just did what we were told to do. And I had seen the original Japanese versions almost every evening before I went in to direct the next episode, so I could see what exactly was going on. And I noticed, there's a lot of different stuff that's going on in the English version than went on in the Japanese version, but I had no control over that.
One of the things that was mentioned on one of the boards that I post on was the ending of the first season with the Day of Destiny episodes. Was that anything at all that, like you said, you had no control over the editorial process, but what was that like, seeing those originals and then seeing the product that you had to record with? Was that jarring in any way?
Well, I don't remember the specific episode, but certainly as a general rule, I was jarred a few times and went, this isn't really the story that's being told here. This is being pasteurized for the North American audience.
So in the book you talk about how you auditioned for a couple of roles before you got Melvin. What other roles did you audition for?
I auditioned for some of the bad guys.
Oh.
I auditioned for Tuxedo Mask, Darien. I don't really remember everything that I auditioned for, but, pretty much any male role,
sure,
I was there to audition for.
So did you start out as the voice director? So you came as the voice director after Tracy Moore had left.
That's right.
And she left after I think it was about 10 episodes or so. I think...
she had a conflicting engagement. She had a theater gig at Huron Theater, and, of course, theater is a lot more work-intensive, and she said to the producers, well, I can come on the dark days, which is Sunday and Monday, and they said, no way, Jose. We're already way behind on this, so you're going to be replaced.
You mentioned something. You mentioned something that Nicole didn't like, that she did too many takes on the lines or something too. Was there any more conflict to it than that? I'm sorry if I'm not trying to get personal.
No, but I noticed it at first that Tracy is a perfectionist, and she wanted everything perfect to her ears, and so there was a lot of cajoling and prodding and so on, but it was taking up a hell of a lot of time.
Sure.
And with television, time is really short. Everything in television happens really quickly. And so this was just taking way too long. So I think there was a combination of things, her conflicting engagement, the amount of time she was taking, recording the various actors, and so on. So it was like, well, goodbye, Tracy, hello, Roland,
sure.
And hello, Terry Hawks.
Yeah. Why did Reno leave? Similar conflict?
No, actually, he got a really good gig in Hollywood.
Oh.
So he went down there to start a new career there. And he thought, and this was, a much better gig than Sailor Moon was, because at the time, none of us had any clue what this was going to be. So he thought, this is some crappy cartoon. I've got a chance to go to Hollywood and make a name for myself, and so he left.
Very, very interesting. You read a lot, like I said, you read a lot of different conflicting stories, different opinions, in different places, and nothing ever really seems to be set right. Going back to you with how you started in acting, I thought that your story in the book was hilarious about how you followed Little Bo Peep out onto the stage and she peed herself, and then that was how you came on.
Yeah, and all these years later, that memory still sticks out in my mind. It was like, well, this is my entrance to show business. My first thing to do is to fall on my keister. But people were laughing. I went, well, okay, that's okay. That's kind of cool. I can make people laugh just by falling on my bum.
It usually works. So
it's the old banana peel joke,
Oh my goodness! I read that, as I guffawed in the beginning when I asked you why you wrote the book. I had to put the book down, and I was laughing so hard when I read that. You mentioned that you are a frequenter of the conventions. How frequently do you get to go, and is that something that you are able to do? Do you wish you could do it more? I'll ask you a couple more things on that later, but just to touch the surface on that.
It's mostly yearly. Yeah, sure, I'd love to attend more conventions. I've been sort of semi-invited to one in Vancouver and one in New Jersey in the new year. But yeah, because I love meeting the fans.
Sure.
That's such an incredible pleasure to see, that even after all these years that people still have such a dedication to the series, and that they're that they're honored to meet you. And I just sort of think of myself as an ordinary guy. I'm not really anybody special. I've just done a few things that people have taken notice of, and it's humbling actually to see how much they admire what I've done, or what all of the actors have done in the series, and the adulation that they present to us at these occasions. I know that they're redoing the original episodes in digital format now, and they're doing a new season in Japan, as I understand.
Right.
But the new dubs are being done in California, I believe. And in fact, at the last con I was at on September 27th, 28th, the new Artemis was there.
who was the former second Black Power Ranger, strangely enough.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, we haven't been, invited back to redo that, because I know that everybody in the cast would say, would I do this again? Yeah, in a New York minute. It was hard, but I loved it, and look what it's led to. Such a phenomenon.
I think it was pretty funny that you pointed out in the book that that the actors resembled the characters that they played, in the way that you saw them marching down the hallway, and I forget what episode they were going to do, but you made mention of that, and I thought that was just a stunning observation.
Yeah, it was just one of those occasions, that like I was wiped out. I was really, because as I've also pointed out in the book, that the days were really, really long. 14, 16-hour days, and then get up and do it all again the next day. And so I was really wiped out. And watching these beautiful women marching towards me with such determination, and they were just headed into the studio. They weren't going to fight evil, except on the, in the scripts. And in that moment, I don't know, I went into another place where, for that one moment, they were the real thing.
Sure.
They were the real scouts. And it absolutely stunned me, And it was sort of a mixture of too much coffee, too little sleep, and too much fatigue. But it was a magic moment.
I thought it was great the way that you described it. Let's see. One of the other things that I wanted to ask you about was when they originally did the process. Nicole, you said, was the one that brought the Rhythmoband. Am I saying that right? I'm not sure.
Yep.
And that was done with the words on the screen, with the beeps matching the words. How is that different than what's done today?
Well, the problem with the Rhythmoband type of recording is that the pre-production is way too expensive.
Mm.
The average Rhythmoband cost per episode to prepare it was about $1,800, whereas the beat method or the wipe method is about $400. So it's just not cost effective. Although the actors love it, because you can do so much so quickly, whereas with the beep or the wipe method, which I describe in the book,
mm-hmm.
It's really time-consuming, and it's tedious, and it's not really very exciting. Whereas the Rhythmoband was exciting, because you saw your words flashing across the screen, and it pumped up the adrenaline, because you've got to keep pace with those words as they're zooming across the screen, and which is not the case with the other two methods, which are actually, to be honest, kind of boring. And you have to be ever vigilant to keep your energy up, because you're usually alone in the studio, and you don't know, you don't hear the other actors' responses to your questions or the questions that you're supposed to respond to. So you're never really too sure about, how do I phrase this? There are so many different ways of answering questions depending upon how they're posed. For instance, where were you last night? It could be angry. Where were you last night? Well, I was here. I was here watching television. Or worried. Where were you last night? I was here. I was here watching television. Or kind of sly. Where were you last night? Well, I was here. I was here watching television. So in cases like that, you've really got to rely on the director and what is the intent of this line, and how am I supposed to respond?
Sure, and not to detract from anyone's work, but it's something that, even just as a casual watcher, I notice it when I'm watching a dub where you see kind of an inconsistency between a question and an answer, or two people in the same scene. They don't really have a connection between them with what they're saying to each other, even whether it's to each other or to a third person, and you're watching this and going, do they really know what they're supposed to do? They're obviously not filming this together because the conversation is, how could I put this, broken up in terms of how it's recorded. And I mean, I'm sure that that's not the intent, but sometimes it just seems obvious, especially in the case of something like dubbing.
Yeah. You know, it's, again, it's because of the time constraints that, you know, sometimes the director will just say, do whatever. You know, we'll fix it in the mix. You know, which is one of the biggest lies of all time. You know, yeah, we'll fix it in the mix.
And they never fix it.
Well, how are you going to change the intent of my delivery in the mix? You know, that ain't going to happen, pal.
One of the other things that you mentioned was that the loop groups that you had brought in tried to slip different obscenities and untoward things by you, and you didn't think that you always got all of them. What, if you don't mind sharing, and again, I'm not trying to pry, I just think it would be hilarious to actually hear this. Where do you feel that they may have not possibly been caught saying obscene things?
You know, I haven't listened to the episodes that closely to find out, but I'm sure that, you know, if somebody listens really, really closely to the background voices, they're going to hear the odd F-bomb or scatological reference.
Oh, my God.
You know, because they truly were brats. You know, that's the loop group. You know, they came loaded for bear, and, you know, it's all a big game to them, and the director is part of the game. You know, let's see if we can get one by the director. You know?
And they look so innocent in the picture that you put in the book, too.
Yeah, oh, they were party hardy, that group. And, you know, to them it was, because it's, you know, it's incidental stuff in terms of the show, you know, so they kind of want to stick out somehow. So they would try these odd little things. See, let's see if I can sneak this one by Roland. You know, see if he'll notice or not. You know, and I caught most of them, I hope.
Especially at the end of a 14-hour day when you're hearing somebody whispering a scatological reference. The last thing, you're probably making them yourself at that point.
Yeah. Well, I had a few scatological references to make to them myself.
I'm sorry I'm laughing so much. This is just great. Susan Roman, in one of her convention appearances, and I just happened to catch it on YouTube, says that when she starts to do a character, she has a go-to phrase to kind of get her into. When she says that phrase to herself, she's able to reproduce the voice. What is your go-to phrase for Melvin when you would have to perform as him?
That would be, "Heidi-ho, do I look really buff to you, Serena?"
What would Molly go for? Martial arts, Melvin! Yeah!
Do I look real buff to you?
That's called your key phrase. And because, you know, it could be months from the time you do the audition until you actually start recording if you get the job. So you went, well, what the heck did I do? I don't remember what I did. Then they'll play you a tape of your audition, and you go, okay. And there's something in the lines that you read during your audition that really gave you the key to your character. So, you know, you go over and over and over again that key phrase to help you remember exactly what you did to do that. It's muscle memory. It's like riding a bike. Once you learn how to ride a bike, you really don't forget. So it's sort of the same thing with voice stuff. If you've done that voice once, then you can do it again. But that's where technique comes in. And that's the 4 stages of learning again, is, okay, I did it once, so certainly I can do it again, but how did I do it?
Right.
And that's why the key phrase is such a central part of recalling exactly what you did.
And that's part of the unconsciously competent part of the 4 phases?
I think so, yeah.
Hey, Melvin, can we go have lunch if it's not too violent for you?
That's okay, Molly. I packed us a picnic lunch. Mom never lets me eat fast food. She's afraid it's bad for my brain.